there is something that we've all missed. It's something that we don't get taught in our schools, in our places of work, in our families, in our homes, and unfortunately, even in our religious centers. And yet, throughout mankind's history, there have been what we can call spiritual teachers, elders, masters, and they've all been clear on what your purpose is for being here. Not just here today, but here in this form, in this life that you have. And what the spiritual masters have told us is that you are here to discover and to live the highest divine version of yourself and not the lowest animal version of yourself. And the spiritual teachers do call us animals. And sometimes spiritual teachers use this sort of language to shake us a little bit. Because you think, well, I'm not an animal. Are you not? Think about it. Animals also raise a family. Animals also develop their homes. They spend their day looking for what they need: food, shelter. They also contribute to their own community. How much more are we doing than that? We go to work, so we're contributing to society in some way. We build a home, we raise a family. We do all the things that we need to sustain ourselves. So what are you doing that's much better than an animal? There is one difference between you and an animal. I know you like to think that there's a lot of differences, but there isn't much. There is one difference. All the things that the animal does, there is no animal that has wanted more out of life. You and I are the only animal that knows that that's not enough. That's the difference. The animals, they're perfectly content raising their families and doing what they need to do. But you know that that's not enough. Every single one of us knows that there's something more. Is that right? What is that something more? That is why you're here. The spiritual masters have discovered what that something more is, and they spend all of their effort trying to illuminate that wisdom to us. And whether we're conscious of it or not, we know deep down inside that all those things that we do every day is not enough. But we pretend it's enough. Even though we know that there's more to life. To everyone else, if people ask, how are you? You pretend. You say, I'm okay, I'm fine. But we're not fine. So that's why I'm here today. So that we can share this wisdom. and hopefully help each other to discover something that is intrinsically true to all human beings, from every culture, from every place, and in every time. How do we know that there's something more? Because, unlike the animals, we're suffocating. Just like you take a fish out of water and it immediately knows that it needs to go back. You and I know. We don't know what it is that's missing, but we know something's missing. That knowing is an awareness of suffering. We know that there's something missing. Now, those of us today who are here, who are young, maybe in our teenage years, maybe in our early 20s, you have the same feeling that you're missing something in your life. But what you think is missing is called the future. So you think that I still have to build my life. There's something coming. I need to do all these things. I still haven't discovered what my job is, what my career is going to be. I don't know who I'm going to get settled down with, whether I'm going to get married. I don't know if I'm going to have children. I don't know where I'm eventually going to settle down. I might live in another country. So you think that there's all these things that you need to sort out yet. And those of us who are a little bit older, who have done all those things, we still know something's missing. And for us, what we believe is that all the problems in our life need to get sorted out. If only my finances get a little bit better. If only the people who are troubling me in my life, if they go away, if those problems get resolved. The thing that both of us are doing, the younger and the older generations, is we've convinced ourselves that tomorrow will be the answer. Am I right? Something needs to get sorted out tomorrow. That's where the masters have said, you've gone wrong. Tomorrow isn't the answer. There's always going to be a tomorrow, and there's always going to be another problem for you to solve. Even if you think that I just need this one thing to be sorted out, something else will come. So the masters are teaching us a different way to live. And this is what I want to share. Because the truth is, nothing you have ever done has deeply satisfied you. Everything that you hoped would bring that sense of fulfillment in your life only lasted a short amount of time. I'm speaking to the elder generation here. The youngsters don't know that yet. For them, they think, no, definitely. When I get this, and this, then I'll be okay. But the ones who are slightly older, we know that it hasn't worked out that way. And in fact, nothing has given us fulfillment. Nothing has given us contentment. And yet, deep within, we know that fulfillment and contentment is something that we should be able to experience. So how do we get there? I want to share with you a verse from a spiritual master that we all know called Guru Nanak. And let's see what Guru Nanak says is missing from our life. Bear in mind that the masters have been telling us this for thousands of years, in different languages and from different cultures. Let's see what Guru Nanak says. There's a beautiful teaching where he says, Jis jal nid karan tum jag aaye, so amrit gur pahi chiyo. Guru Nanak says that you are here to drink a juice out of life. He uses the word amrit. He said, each and every single one of you are here to drink the juice of life. But you need the Gur. You need the higher wisdom to be able to know where to find this juice. He says, Chodo ves pek chaturai, dubda e fal nahi jiyo. He said, you're not going to get this juice of life by pretending pek. This is what we do. We pretend to other people that we're okay. We show them that we're okay by all the things that we've bought in our life. How are you? Oh, I'm fine. Look at my house. Look at my family. Look at this new car that I bought. Look at these new clothes that I'm wearing. Guru Nanak says, Chodo ves pek chaturai. You don't have to look a certain way. You know this is not where it's at. You don't even have to look religious. He said, this is not where you're going to find it. You're not going to find it in this dubida, in this duality, this otherness. There's not something else that you have to do in order to find the juice of life, the fal, the fruit of life. So where is it? Manare thir raho mat gat jahi jiyo. O mind, stay here. Don't go somewhere else. Then where do I look? Stay where? Guru is saying, don't look anywhere else. Bahar dhoondat bahut dukh paave. Kar amrit kat mahi jiyo. He said, you've made one fundamental mistake. You all know that you're here to drink the juice of life. You all know that there's a juice to life. But he said, you've all looked in the wrong places. And he said, we have been looking outside, and there is a juice to life that is inside. Now, what does that mean? What is this juice of life? What is inside? What do we need to look inside ourselves for when we know everything about ourselves? If you close your eyes, you said, I know what there is. There's pitch black darkness, and there's thoughts. Thoughts of the future and memories of the past. Frustrations come up, that things that shouldn't have happened. New ideas come up about things that could happen. What else is there? So we've convinced ourselves that there's nothing more to look inside. It's like if somebody tells you the answer is in that dark room over there, pitch black. And you go into the dark room and said, I don't know what you're looking at. There's nothing else here. It's pitch black. But the Guru is saying that we have lived our life in the wrong way. And we have known that something is missing, and the entire life we've spent not knowing where to look. And so maybe you might convince yourself, it might be in other people, but it's not in here. Maybe it's missing for me. Maybe there's a bug in the system, there's a defect. I've looked in here, there's nothing there. So what do? You try meditation for a couple of minutes, you say it didn't work, and then you go back to looking outside. This is what you have not been taught. This is what is missing in human education. We don't know how to be different to animals, so we continue to live our lives the way animals live their lives. We are not higher beings. We're nowhere near being divine beings. Yet the Guru is saying, you are all divine. This is what your masters are here for. Then there's the others of us who say, that sounds like way too much effort. What is so good inside that I'm going to find? How good can it be? You ask the youngsters these days, and they all want to be billionaire YouTubers. They see that lifestyle. It's very interesting that when we were younger and we saw celebrities on TVs, in TV shows and movies, there was no idea in our mind that we could become one of those. That's just the entertainers, they were doing their job. But you speak to the younger generation and they look at not the celebrity culture, but the YouTuber culture. And they think, I can actually be that. They don't realize that for every one successful YouTuber, there are 10,000 failures. They don't realize that most of those who look successful for the 5 minutes of the video that they're watching are spending weeks, months, years to get to that point. They don't realize that most of these celebrity YouTubers are actually miserable in their life. They don't know that. They only see the little clips and they think, he's got a lot of money, she's got a lot of fame, beauty, all these products. I wish I had those things. We all know the young teenagers in our life that are experiencing some of these things. And there is no room for them to go and explore within themselves. They don't know what to look for. We don't know what to look for. We've never been shown these things. So there's one group of people that say, it's too complicated. There's another group of people that are convinced there's nothing to look for. There's another group of people that think, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Today, I've got other problems to solve. And I'm not trying to diminish some of the problems that we have in our life. There are going to be people here that are going through horrendous things in their lives right now. But you're all convinced that there's something else to be solved first, and this is not worthy of your time or attention. Everything else is more important. And this is what the masters have been trying to teach us all along, that you are focusing on the wrong things. And that isn't to say that you shouldn't have a life. That isn't to say that you shouldn't build a home and raise a family and be successful in your careers. But that's not where you stop. What the spiritual masters have wanted us to do is to change how we prioritize things. You and I have always prioritized the outside world. Let's do that first. But we know that that's left us feeling empty. There's something missing. That's left us in a state of turmoil. That's left us in a state of never being satisfied. And this is true whether you're religious or you're not religious. This is true whether you've been going to your temples for decades or whether it's something new to you. It's true whatever background you come from. It's true for every single one of you. And yet the masters claim that there's one solution, one size fits all. And you're looking in the wrong place, you need to look inside. So how do we go about doing this? Today I'd like to present to you just one solution. I want you to change one aspect of how you live your life, I want you to move away from your prayers and focus on praise. What do I mean by that? We all live praying for something else. And we don't realize it, but every moment our mind has created a habit of wanting to change something slightly. It's very subtle, we don't even know that we're doing it. Even now, some of you are sitting in the chairs and thinking, I wish this chair was more comfortable. I wish he would hurry up and get to the point. I wish I didn't come here. Maybe I should be somewhere else. You don't realize that at every moment, your mind is created a habit of looking at that situation and wanting to change it ever so slightly. When you're driving to work, you're thinking about the destination. When you reach work, you're thinking about the weekend. When you reach the weekend, you're thinking about the holiday that you need to book. Your mind is constantly looking at something else. There is always a tomorrow. There's always another moment. And when that moment comes, that's when I'll find the peace. And we don't realize that we're doing this all the time. With every single scenario, we're doing this. So you've convinced yourself that the juice of life will come tomorrow. Happiness is in the future. And we give ourselves these ideas like, I've got a lot of goals. We convince ourselves that this is a good way to live. You're taught to create a vision board and put up images of all the things that you want. You're encouraged from a young age to have aspirations and goals. Bear in mind, I'm not telling you not to do any of these things. The masters are telling us something different though. And so this is a moment for us to reflect. What are we doing? Is this the right way to do it? And the way that you know that something is missing is you need to just ask yourself one question. Am I happy? It's a very simple question. But it's a very loaded question. Are you happy? Or is there still something missing? So what we've ended up with is something I call the pain-pleasure cycle. Deep down, we all know there's something missing. And so we experience a slight discomfort, a pain of some sort. And so we project an idea, oh, I'm uncomfortable, so let me go and solve this problem in some way. So we go seeking out pleasures. We get the pleasure, and then we experience a little bit of happiness, and then eventually that happiness fades. And then we want to solve that pain again, because a new pain arises. And what we don't ever contemplate on is the fact that this pain arises again and again and again, this discomfort. And again, we try and solve it by doing something else, something more. We don't look at the pain. We just immediately assume that there's something else that we need to solve. I know why. It's because this isn't working. It's because this person said this thing to me, or this scenario happened. Remember, I'm not here to diminish the problems that you're going through in your life. I know there are real traumas. But those traumas are not going away. There is always a new trauma. But there is a way to ride the wave of trauma. And this is what we are here to learn. Because if we don't learn this, what you're going to end up with is this uninspired, lackluster life that we're all living. And a painful question that we can ask ourselves is this what we imagined life was going to be when we were young? Is this what we wanted as children? Is this what we hoped for? This mundane, everyday experience? Or as children, did we think that life was full of potential? That growing up was going to be exciting? That life was worth living? And when we don't feel that sense of satisfaction in our life, we then project that onto others. We take it out on others. Is this what you wanted? I'm sorry if I'm asking painful questions, but through the pain you will realize where the real answers lie. So I want you to be aware that your prayers are the cause of your suffering. Your constant desire for something else, that is the reason you're not happy with your life. And I'm not saying don't improve your life. But don't place all of your happiness at the end of that next thing that you need to fix. Start learning how to enjoy the process. So how do we go about doing that? Recognize that your prayers are a type of suffering. Let me say that again. Your prayers are your suffering. Because every time you say, I want, what you're really saying is, I'm not happy now. You're selling your happiness to something else. When I get that, that's when happiness will come. This is what we need to learn. Your prayers are causing your suffering. Now, there's going to be those of you that says, is there no room for prayer? In the Sikh tradition, we call it ardas. What about ardas? What about prayers? I hate to burst your bubble. There's no God sitting in the clouds waiting to hear your wish list. You know, I did with my kids. They're always saying, Dad, can you buy me this? What about this? You know, there's always something new. So I created, both my boys, I created a Amazon wish list. And I said, whatever you want, just put it in that basket. The reality is, that's actually what all of us are doing. We're creating a constant wish list. What we haven't realized is that wish list is not the cause of more joy. What we haven't realized is what we're doing is creating attachments to other things that cannot deliver the joy that you know you deserve. You know that you deserve it. You know that it's possible to be joyful, yet you think it's at the end of your shopping basket online. And if it isn't out there, then it's up there somewhere. So you pray, hoping for another worldly attachment. To solve something that's happening in here, you're trying to solve something out there. So what can we do differently? If we don't want to live a life of prayer, the Masters suggest live a life of praise. What does that mean? Change how you interact with every moment. Starting now, with this moment. Have you considered the miracle of this moment? We take it for granted, but there are so many miracles happening this moment. There is so much magic in the very fact that now exists. Sometimes I just take a moment to think, what is all this? Think about it. What is this? Where did this come from? Did you make this? What is all this? And it might sound ridiculous. Am I supposed to praise all of this everyday stuff? Yes. Try it. You've never tried it. You've never known the joy of appreciating the miracle of this moment. And if you've done it for a couple of minutes, then your mind kicks back in again. Okay, that's enough. Now get back to the jobs that you have to do, the real world. This is supposed to be the fake world. This is escapism. But the real world still has all these problems that need solving. Get back to work. That's what our mind tells us. The masters are saying, hang on. There is nothing out there that has caused you joy. And when I say joy, I mean long-lasting, permanent delight and contentment. The masters are saying, we don't live out there. We've been there. And we realize that real joy is here. This is where we live. We live here. You live out there. So how do we do this? What is the real practical advice? The advice is very simple. Stop wanting anything different. Sounds too good to be true, but try it. Even in this moment, what if this is all you had? There's no tomorrow, there's nothing else. This was it. Is it enough? Can you make it enough? Can you experience this moment as a miracle? Because you're missing every miracle that's passing you by, waiting for the next one, waiting for the next moment of magic. And the masters are saying the miracle is happening now. Despite all of your problems, despite all of your traumas, despite all of the terrible things that you think have happened in the past. How do we see this moment as a miracle? You have to recognize what your mind does. Your mind has created a habit of missing all the miracles and only looking at the one thing that's missing. It's like when you lose a tooth and your tongue always goes to that bit. The rest of the time, your tongue never appreciated a mouthful of teeth. But when one is missing, then all of your attention is there. Or if you've ever cut your finger, all of your attention is there. Otherwise, you've never appreciated the beauty of having health. But when something goes wrong, your attention is there. That's what your mind is doing. Always fixating on the one thing that's missing. And yet, that is a habit that you've done so many times that you're not aware of it. It's time to start creating a new habit. And the new habit is to celebrate. Despite all of your traumas, celebrate. Create that as your habit. Now notice what your mind is saying. Oh, that sounds too difficult. What about this big problem? What about that? It might work for everyone else, but I have a real problem. Everybody's mind is saying that right now. It's too simplistic. I have a real problem that needs to be dealt with. And so you're going to go back out there and try to solve that problem again? How many times has that worked for you? When did you reach the point where you said, all my problems are solved? Anyone reach that point? All my problems are solved? Look around, folks. Whichever problem you solve now, there is no one in the room who has solved everything except the masters, except the spiritual masters. For them, all problems are solved. Whatever new problems come, even that is okay. So rather than placing your attention on the next gift, bring your attention to the giver of gifts, the life that is constantly providing for you. Focus your attention on what is, not what is not. You know, there's a very easy way to check where you are in your life. Just spend 2 minutes staring at yourself in the mirror. It's very difficult. Notice when you stare at yourself in the mirror, what do you see? All of this stuff starts coming up. Most of you can't look in the mirror for more than 10 seconds without genuine disgust. You can't stand to look at yourself. Not because there's something wrong, because all the negative thoughts start coming out. Because you know what's really going on inside. That's why I started by saying that we're pretending that we're okay. We're not okay. If you were okay, you could look at yourself in the mirror and you would smile. But you can't. This is the real trauma that's going on inside. You know, I did an experiment with my children. I asked them, where is happiness? And they said, Dad, when I become a millionaire, you watch. When I grow up, I'm going to be so rich. I said, okay, good, go do that. And I said, so you want money? You think money is the thing that's going to make you happy? They said, yeah, Dad, definitely. I'm going to buy a big mansion. I'm going to have all these cars in front. I said, okay, money's going to solve that. Okay, fine. If I gave you $1,000, but in return, I said, give me one of your arms. And they had to think, oh, hang on. That sounds like a tricky question. I said, here, I'll give you $1,000. In return, you give me one of your arms. What would you say? They said, no. I said, okay, $10,000. Give me one of your legs. I said, no. I said, $1 million. $1 million, but you knew that you only had a week to live. They said, no. I said, 1 billion, but you wouldn't wake up tomorrow morning. And they, that number becomes a bit big. They said, hang on, wait. 1 billion? But they think about it. No. If you give me $1 billion, but I can't wake up tomorrow. So I said, hang on, are you saying that waking up tomorrow is worth more than $1 billion? And then the penny dropped. If waking up tomorrow was worth more than $1 billion to you, why aren't you over the moon every morning that you wake up? If it's worth that much to you, that no amount of money in the world is worth more than that, Why don't you feel the miracle of waking up in the morning? And like that, there are so many miracles that are happening right in front of your eyes, but we don't know how to do it. There are so many blessings. If you were to start counting your blessings, you wouldn't know where to stop. So many blessings, so much abundance. And yet your mind has created a habit of ignoring all of them. The masters never said that what we're going to teach you is complicated. In fact, they said it's so simple. It's right here and it's right now. The question is, are you ready to drink? Or are you going to ignore everything that the masters have taught you, and you're going to go back to your old ways of trying to find juice somewhere else? The juice is already here within you. But it's not enough to just know this theoretically. You really have to learn how to experience it, how to drink it, how to make every moment a moment of gratitude, a moment of praise. The solution is simple. Stop praying, start praising. And when you do that, you will realize that there is a sacred way to live every moment of your life.
A recent study has shown that over 75% of Sikhs say that their life feels stressful or overwhelming. These feelings can develop into depression, alcohol abuse, or even suicide. We believe that Guru Nanak's wisdom can help transform people's lives. Nanak Naam relies on your donation to help create more videos and podcasts like this to educate people all over the world on how to use Guru Nanak's teachings to improve their emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. Set up a monthly donation today and help change someone's life. Visit nanaknaam.org/donate.
Thank you, Jay. My question is that, the session is very good about internal, how do we look after ourselves, but no man is an island. And just trying to understand if the people around you, and I know that's not good to comment about it, but if, you have people around you who are anxious, or not necessarily anxious, but dealing with things differently and wanting that $1 million or $1 million and so on, and you're part of that, either family, group, community, how do you keep yourself separate? And how do you manage that within a community?
So I think I understand the question is, if somebody around you is not necessarily practicing in the same way as you, yeah? The most important thing when you practice is, what is the outcome of that practice? A lot of the times people get fixated on ceremonies, rituals, practices, and not on the outcome. So the question you have to ask yourself is, am I first demonstrating that what I'm practicing is transforming my life? And once that transformation is clear, it starts to have an impact in how you deal with yourself, how you deal with everyday scenarios, and how you deal with other people. You have to first be a beacon of change. When the people around you can see the positive changes that are going on within you,
You don't need to try to convince anybody else to change. You simply need to be your own beacon of light. Now, there are times when there are people around you who challenge us, who confront us, who press our buttons, and they know all the right buttons to push. And we sometimes fall back into our old ways, and we retaliate, we react. There's a beautiful teaching from the Sikh tradition that says, "Jeko nind kare har jan ki, apna gun na gawave." If somebody criticizes a spiritual saint, a servant of the divine, they don't lose their good qualities. They don't compromise on their qualities. No matter what the other person says, you do not waver from your commitment to inner peace. That is something that only you can control. You cannot change everybody else. You cannot even control the circumstances and the environment around you sometimes. If you can get away from those who are not a positive influence in your life, then you should. But sometimes you can't. So then you have to go within yourself. You have to look within yourself. Am I being that beacon of light? Am I demonstrating the values, the wisdom, the qualities that my spiritual wisdom is teaching me? And am I able to apply that even in the harshest conditions? So you yourself, judge yourself, look within yourself.
The situation in today's world, many punts such as Radha Swamis, Nirankari, Namdhari, Sacha Sauda, all use Bani references for spiritual teachings, give their own Namdan, and have their own living gurus, and millions of people follow these sects. The question is, why a living guru is deemed so important in today's world? And how can we continue following Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji as the ultimate guru for meditation and self-realization?
There are many traditions which focus on the need for a living guru. I laugh at that term because it implies that the spiritual wisdom is dead and that you need a living master to bring that alive. There is only one higher truth. I do not subscribe to this idea that there is a Sikh truth and a Hindu truth and a Christian truth and a Muslim truth. If it is true, then it is true for everyone, for all people, in all places and at all times. So when Guru Nanak is talking about a truth, he's not talking about a belief system that is his own version of the truth. It is the ultimate truth. And if there is one ultimate truth, then there is one ultimate wisdom that brings you to that truth. In the Sikh tradition, that ultimate truth is oneness. It is made clear that that ultimate truth is that there is one living, spiritual, divine essence that exists in all people. That is the truth. And the Guru is any wisdom that brings you back to that. Where you get that wisdom from is irrelevant. As long as it takes you back to that original source. If somebody is able to explain it to you in a way that makes it easier for you to understand, in a language that you understand, fine. Go there. Take that wisdom there. But as long as that wisdom is taking you back to that higher truth and not just aligning you with one group, don't be reliant on one person, one leader. The real truth, the Guru, is the ultimate wisdom. And you should be confident to align yourself with the truth rather than the individual who brings you that truth. Guru Gobind Singh Ji goes as far as saying in the Chaupai Sahib, Aad ant ekay avtara, soi Guru samjhiyo hamara. That one divine essence who has been there from the beginning and will be there till the end, that is my Guru. He doesn't align with any one religious script, doesn't align himself with any teacher. He's saying that divine essence is my teacher. There's a beautiful shabad that says, Pati tore malini pati pati jiyu. It's referencing a gardener. The word malini is a gardener. And it says, you're breaking these flowers in your garden and going and placing them in front of a dead idol. He says, Puli malani hai eho, Satgur jagata hai deo. He said, this gardener, this kind of person is mistaken. The very thing that is alive, you're killing it and going and putting it in front of a dead stone idol. He says, you don't realize that your Guru is alive in every single one of these beings. Pati pati jiyo. Every single one of these flowers and plants is alive. It's bursting with aliveness. And he says, the wisdom of that aliveness is in all of those things as well. So, your Guru isn't dead. The Guru can never be dead. Higher wisdom can never be dead. This higher wisdom is aligned with the higher divine spirit. That divine spirit is the thing that's keeping you alive. How can it be dead? It's the one that creates us. It's the one that sustains us. And the wisdom of that is embedded within itself. So go anywhere that takes you back to that original source.
My question was this: with everything going on in the world at the moment, it's hard not to see negativity when you see death and destruction, and you see not just the suffering, but the partisan negative discourse in everyday life, not just politics, but the assumption that if someone doesn't agree with you, they must be wrong. How do we go about combating this in our everyday lives because of the anxiety and the negative feelings that it brings along with it?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you so much. The question is, when there's so much negativity in the world, when there's so much destruction, pain, suffering going on in the world, and when there's so much division in the world, how do you manage? What can the spiritual wisdom teach us? One of the most important lessons that the spiritual wisdom teaches us is when you take a step back and you recognize the magnitude of creation, the grandeur of it all, it does a very important thing for us. It humbles us. When we are within our ego, we are inflated. We are focusing on our self-importance. And it is that self-importance that we project onto others when we conflict with them. And so when you're arguing with someone, when you're looking down on someone, when you're saying that they're wrong, what you're really saying is, I'm right. Notice that the spiritual wisdom tells you to avoid all criticism. Avoid any gossip. Avoid criticizing others. Because even when you're criticizing someone else behind their back, what you're secretly saying is, at least I'm not like that. And so you're inflating your ego again. You're inflating your sense of self-importance. the spiritual experience of knowing and tasting oneness automatically reduces that sense of self-importance. So much so that when you see oneness in everything, that you see the divine beauty even in the worst things. When we talk about oneness, we still struggle with looking at that oneness in everything. We still have this Santa Claus figure of some God in the sky. And by that I mean that he sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. That's the image that we have of God. That some guy in the sky is just looking at us, waiting for us to mess up so he can punish us, or waiting for us to do something good so he can reward us. And it's that guy in the sky that we pray to and we ask for things. The wisdom of oneness is saying, forget that person. There is nobody up in the clouds. It's everywhere. It's all around. Guru Gobind Singh Ji says, Namo Kalhe Karta, Namo Shantarupe. I bow down to the creator of chaos. I bow down to the creator of chaos. Because if it's oneness, then it is not just all the good things, all the rosy things. It's everything. It is everywhere. In Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Japji Sahib, he's saying, Asank Murak Andhkor, Asank Chor Haram Khor. He's saying there are infinite fools, infinite thieves, Asank Galvad Hatya Kamaye, infinite tormentors who are beheading other people. But how does he end that? Nanak neech kahe vichar, varya na java ekvar. He says, I am lower than all of them. Even the rapists and the murderers. And we can't understand that. We say, well, I'm certainly I'm better than some of those. I can't be, how can I put myself lower than that? Because you recognize the spirit of oneness in all of them. And that's where now it starts to challenge even our own understanding. What are we worshipping? Are we worshipping murderers? No. You're worshipping that spirit that has the ability to create the entire spectrum of the universe. It is not for you to judge that the universe, some parts of it are good and some parts of it are bad. The universe is far greater than you and me. It has the ability to do everything. And yes, there are many people who are acting out of their ego. But even within them, the spirit of oneness exists. That divine light. You have to mean it when you say, Sab mein jyot jyot hai soy. Sab mein jyot. The divine light exists in everyone and everything. We say these words in a very flowery way, but we don't know how to really apply it. That doesn't mean that we condone everything. There is incredible atrocities happening in the world right now. There are terrorists. There are the worst among us. There are the worst governments out there, killing their own people. Sab mein jyot jyot hai soy. The divine light is doing it all. The question is, can you worship this kind of oneness? Or is your God only someone that has to do the good things? The Santa Claus God? Because if that's the one you want, you've got an unrealistic understanding of what is going on here. Guru Nanak recognizes all of them. Asank Murak Andhkor, Asank Chor Haram Khor. Nanak neech kahe vichar. He says, I am low. I am the absolute lowest of the low because I am nothing. What am I? When you see the oneness in all, you also see the oneness in yourself, and you recognize the insignificance of you. What is you? Let's talk about this. Because if you do not understand your own ego, none of this wisdom will make sense to you. You have an ego about something that has nothing to do with you. We create a sense of self-importance over our intelligence, which has nothing to do with you. It's all to do with the various influences that have come into our life. You create a self-importance about your ideas. I've got good ideas, I'm a good person. This person's got bad ideas. How many times have you defended an idea and later realized that you had it wrong? How many times have you argued with someone, no, this is right, this is right, this is right, and only to realize that you were wrong? Who are you? What are you proud of? Did you create this body? You've created nothing. And once your own spiritual practice can show you the stupidity of your own sense of self-importance. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a laughing Buddha. And the laughing Buddha is not laughing at the world, he's laughing at his own stupidity. Look how important I thought I was. And when he realized that, he burst out laughing. So, focus on your humility. Focus on not criticizing everything that's going on around us, but actually criticizing the ego that thinks it's better than everyone else.
So my question is, following on just what you said, I really struggle with that concept of the divine oneness, because isn't this divine oneness going to judge me when I die, weigh up my goods and bads and decide who I'm going to be or what I'm going to be reincarnated as in the next life? So that divine oneness sounds really organic. It sounds sort of ephemeral, vague, but yet I'm going to be judged. You know what I mean? I can't get those two things together.
Thank you. Very important question. We hear a lot about what possibly can happen after we die. And we get confused and we get conflicting ideas. Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Will I get judged? Do I go to one place or do I get reincarnated? I take a different interpretation on that. I openly say I have no idea where I'm going to go when I die, nor do I have any idea where I came from before I was born. Nor do I have any interest. If I'm not going to remember it, I'm not interested. What I am interested in is right now, am I in heaven or am I in hell? I don't know what this oneness is going to do. There are certain things that are beyond our understanding. Where did we come from? Where do we go when we die? But right now, the only question you have to concern yourself with is, am I in heaven in this moment? Because this world has the ability to be a heaven for you or a hell for you. Which one do you want to be in? Maybe it will judge you for the things that you have done wrong. Then the next question is, did I do those things? Or were those things a natural outcome of my previous understandings? The view that I take is you and I have no choice what is happening now and what is going to happen in the next moment. We are simply acting out our conditioning. And by conditioning, I mean that whatever it is that has happened to you until this moment will decide how you respond to the next moment. You decide the next moment based on whatever understanding you've been given up to that point. So do you even have the ability to make the next choice? Or is the next choice simply the most obvious choice that could have been made based on who you are at that point? If that's the case, who is judging who? And if we talk about a oneness, how can a oneness judge itself? If it is all oneness, then let the oneness judge itself. It's got nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with you. Let it play whatever game it wants to play. The only thing you need to concern yourself with is, where is my mind right now? Am I in heaven or am I in hell? Because if you yourself do not contemplate on that, don't worry about being judged after you die. You yourself are receiving punishment now. You are punishing yourself in this moment, let alone what happens after you die.
The question is that if there is no free will, and whatever will be, why does our mind have the freedom of thinking of options?
If there is no free will, why does our mind have the freedom to choose options? I'd love to do an experiment with you all. I'm going to give you some options, and I simply want you to choose one of those options. Don't overthink it. Don't plan what your answer is going to be. Just see what option comes up. Red or blue, pick one. Pencil or pen, pick one. Cat or dog? Apple or orange? Now, I want you to notice not which answer comes up, but how an answer comes up. Up or down, pick one. Tea or coffee? Young or old? Hot or cold? When I gave those options, did everyone pick answers? What did you notice about how the answers came to you? Did you pick the answer, or did you wait for the answer to pop into your mind? You wait. When you're just presented with two choices, the mechanism by which the option is chosen by you is you sit and you wait, and the answer, the choice gets made, and it tells you what answer you're going to pick. The choice gets made, and then you yourself, from your own ego, say, I made that choice. Did everyone follow that? Do you have the ability to choose options, or does an option simply present itself to you? Did you choose, or did the preference select itself? It selected itself based on, so if I said tea or coffee, some of you are going to naturally lean one way based on whatever your past experiences are. Of course, if you're allergic to tea and you've only drunk coffee every day of your life, there's no choice. Coffee is the obvious answer based on your circumstances. Based on your past, how you respond to your choices is simply a matter of all of your conditioning coming to this point. You could never choose the one that you don't like, because all of your conditioning has taught you that that is the right answer. So the other one will never be chosen. So do you choose? And once you begin to self-introspect, this is why the answers are with you. You've got to spend a bit of time here. Once you begin to see the nature of your own thoughts, you realize you have not made a single choice in your life. Think about this word free will. The question is, if we don't have free will, how come I choose options? Free from what? Free will from what? When we say free will, we're saying either God chooses or I choose. And my ego doesn't like the fact that life chooses everything for me, so I want to choose some things. I am free from the oneness. I am free, I am independent. And it is an illusion. And this isn't just spiritual babble. There is more than enough research papers in psychology now that has proven that free choice is an illusion. And if you're looking into it, look at things like determinism. There is more than enough evidence that actually says they did experiments where they wired people's brains and they did a choice exercise like this. And they said, you're going to choose between red button and blue button or whatever it is. And what they recognized was before the conscious brain knew the answer, the scientists at the back could see which answer they were going to pick. Because they were able to wire in certain parts of the brain and they could see he's going to choose blue before the guy actually knew what the answer was that he was going to choose. Because it's just coming from somewhere else. So it's not just nice spiritual talk. You don't have free will. The question now is, how do you live your life? Are you a slave? If you're not free, are you a slave? There's a wonderful freedom that comes knowing that I have to make no choices. You can look at it as being a slave, or you can look at it as being free. Whatever choice the universe is going to make through me, it will make. And the truth of the matter is, we love to think that we have choice. We love to think that we have free will, because that is the way in which we keep this identity. We retain our sense of me, I amness. The whole spiritual tradition, the wisdom is to get rid of your I amness, because your I amness is the thing that has separated you from what you really are. You are not I amness, you are oneness. That's who you really are. Man, tu jot sarup hai, apna mool pachan. Oh mind, you are the light. You are the divine light. Recognize your true being. That is what spirituality is. Recognize that you are not this character that you've made up. And also don't beat yourself up about it. Even this ego is something that is a natural phenomenon. It has been created. It's a game. When you recognize that you do not have the ability to make any choices, sit back and enjoy the ride.
So what you are saying is it similar to Tera Pada Meetha Lage?
It's similar to tu hi, tu hi, tu hi, tu hi. There is only you. Even in Tera Pada Meetha Lage, which is a beautiful teaching, a beautiful wisdom, whatever you do is sweet to me. Not because whatever you do I accept, I'll tolerate whatever you do. Meetha lage because I have no say in this. It is so sweet to me because I now have been able to recognize how the system works. It has nothing to do with you. This is you, this is you, this is you. It's all the universe just unfolding. You know, Guru Nanak gave the entire answer, Ik Onkar. There is one thing that is unfolding infinitely. It has nothing to do with you. It is doing it to itself. The universe is playing with itself. In the Hindu tradition, they show this as Krishna with a flute. The divine is playing his own music. You are the flute with which the music of life is flowing through. Let Krishna play whatever music he wants to play through you.
It's said spirituality or Sikhi is a way of life. And everything that we do in current life, in spirituality, it's finding the peace within yourself. But how to find the balance then where there's so many things happening in the world around? I think the question's been asked, but just finding the balance, how not to be moved what's happening outside. We can't keep quiet because that will be selfish for something that you see and put a blind eye to it. But also not lose the peace within yourself. Secondly, again, the balance. I want to be ambitious, I want to grow, but at the same time, I don't want to be selfish and self-centered either. How to find that balance to live that way of life that spirituality is talking about.
So the question is, when there's so much going on in the world, do we just sit back and be peaceful? How do we avoid that leading to laziness where we don't do anything and we just allow the world to continue and we don't contribute in any way? We don't get moved enough that we stand up for something that we believe in. This question doesn't need you to do anything. When you are moved enough, based on your conditioning, you will act. And the example that I think that works quite well. If you, as a grown adult, are walking down the road and you see 2 5-year-old children fighting with each other, at that moment, do you have the ability to intervene and do something about it? You do. Nature has created the system and the scenario in that way that you are moved enough to do something about it and you are empowered enough to do something about it. So you do. You have the wisdom, you have the ability, you have the passion to do something about it. So you do. It isn't a choice. You step in. If somebody was to come and attack your child, you don't have to figure it out whether you should or you shouldn't. You have the ability, you have the motivation to do something, and you naturally do. If you are 5 years old, walking down the street, and you see 2 grown adults fighting, do you have the ability to do something about it? Most likely not. Because the way that situation has presented itself is that you might have the motivation to do something, you might feel like you should do something, but 2 grown adults, you're a child, you don't. You don't have to figure out what you have to do, what is right and wrong. Your conditioning will tell you what is right and wrong. And when your conditioning moves you enough that you say, now enough is enough, I have to stand up, even that is not your choice. Even that is that spirit of oneness moving you, because that is the way that game is being played at that moment. So continue to observe the world as it is. When it pains you enough, you will do something about it, by whatever means you can. And if simply doing something about it means educating others about it, you'll do that. Sometimes we feel heartache because there's so much atrocities going on that we feel like somebody should do something, but we feel helpless. We don't know how to do anything about it. But you can do whatever small steps you can do, because you feel so helpless that what is my contribution going to be? How am I, maybe sitting on one side of the world, going to have the ability to change major catastrophes going on around the world? you don't have to question whether you can or you cannot act. Whatever you do, be motivated by your peace though. Notice that spiritual masters have not always just sat in a cave and meditated. When they were motivated to help, they stood up. So much so that they picked up the sword and said, now is not the time for inaction. Now is the time for action. But while they're doing those things, they are still in a state of peace internally, even though externally they may have to do quite difficult things. You should not be in a state, do not respond from your agitation. Respond from peace, even if it means you may have to be active in the world. Your inner state should always be in a state of peace. And I know that sounds like a contradiction, because saying, well, if I'm in peace, then how can I act? And when you have small children, you know that's very possible. You're at peace, the children are fighting amongst themselves. You don't get involved in their arguments, but you know that even though you're not involved in that, you do need to do something about it. So you step in, you resolve the issue, and you walk away. You don't need to get yourself emotionally involved in whatever they're fighting about. In the same way, treat the whole world, treat everything as that, but that should never compromise your own serenity. That's very important.
Yeah, who's the creator? Like we're talking about the life force. So environment is a creator. When we die, we go in there and we coming from it. And one other thing, when somebody die, we visit to the funeral home and we scare and we think, from today I'm not going to do the bad things. I leave everything here. And once back, I sit in my car and drive back in this world, and I trap back on same situation. Even sometimes I cry, why I'm doing back again those things. And when again back to the funeral home, same commitment, and again back to. So how we can avoid to not trap back on that situation. And one other thing, like when we do the meditation, it's okay if I imagine the Guru's picture or Guru Granth Sahib in my mind. And what I need to do to anchor my mind is a Shabad or anything.
I'll take the question around the commitment that you make to change your life versus actually being able to change your life. Anyone who's been on a diet will know that you wake up every morning saying, today I'm going to stick to the diet. And then it comes about lunchtime and you open the fridge and you say, oh, there's a nice slice of cake there. Maybe I'll start tomorrow. Or this slice of cake won't hurt. It won't affect my diet too much. But it's never one slice. Then it's the next one, then it's the next one, then it's the next one. So there's a big difference between thinking that you're going to do something about it and actually making the change. And the reality is, if you want to see results you've never seen before, you have to do something you've never done before. You can't go back into the same environment with the same influences around you and hope for a change. They say that the definition of lunacy is doing the same thing every day and thinking that you're going to get a new result. So now the question is, what is it that is dragging me back into the old ways? Because you have that inner desire, I want to do something different. And it takes some moment in your life that shocks you, that says, I really should do something different. Why don't you make that choice when you go back into your normal world? Is because you've surrounded yourself by everything that reminds you of the old ways. So you have to make some active choice. Going back to the diet analogy, stop buying the cake. You can't keep buying the cake and putting it in your fridge every week and then saying, but today I'm not going to eat it. And the same thing is about what is influencing. What are you surrounding yourself by every day? Simple analogy is if you think that, okay, today I'm going to stop drinking, but you go back to your same circle of friends and they're doing the same thing, you're going to fall back into those ways. The temptations are too strong. And the way the mind works is because the mind, remember, these aren't choices. These are simply responses that your mind comes up with. If your mind has made the same choice again and again and again, then eventually it becomes a habit you don't even choose. And we have to understand the nature of habits. And the way that I like to think about it is, if you go to a new place of work, usually you find that if you're working in an office and it's your first day there, the company will assign someone and say, this guy will tell you where everything is. So you get shown around the office and they show you around and say, okay, these are where the fire exits are, these are where the bathrooms are, this is where the kitchen is, and there's a coffee machine there. You can just press this button and you can get your coffee every day. So you say, okay, that sounds good. So the next morning comes and you think, maybe I should try this new coffee machine. And you go and you make it, oh, there's too many choices, I think I'm going to choose that one today. I'm going to choose cappuccino today. You go back the next day, you say, oh, I know where it is now, I'm going to go and pick that one, have a cappuccino today. The third day, the fourth day, what's happening is that decision-making process is becoming quicker and quicker, easier and easier, because you're surrounded by that same scenario. And then you've been doing that for such a long time that you go into work today and somebody tells you the coffee machine's broken and you're agitated. You say, I can't start my day without my coffee. What's happened? Something that was a decision at one point has now not become a decision, it's just become automatic behaviors, it's just become a habit. They say that a habit that you can't say no to is called an addiction. That's the definition of an addiction. When you can no longer say no. Even in your mind you say, I shouldn't do it, but you can't do it. So that environment that you're in, that same environment that you're in, is just triggering the same thing as in your brain. You know, there's a phrase in neuroscience that says neurons that wire together, fire together. Or is it the other way around? Yeah. So what that means, so say that again, what is it? Neurons that fire together, wire together. Okay, neurons that fire together, wire together. What that means is every day you go to the coffee machine and your brain makes a connection that says, coffee machine means I need to make a coffee. So your brain literally wires the coffee machine with the habit of making a coffee. So every day you see that coffee machine, you don't make a choice. Literally your brain has made that connection. Those cells are literally wired together. So you see it, you do it. You see the same friends, you act in the same way. You see the same cake in the fridge, you act in the same way. You have to actively change your surroundings in order to really make a change. It can't just be an idea that you have. You have to really make some of those difficult choices. This is why the wisdom teaches you about the word sangat. Sangat is a very important word. It means your influences, that which you surround yourself with. And we like to think that our influences are just the people, but really everything is influencing us. The clothes that you wear is influencing you to think in a certain way, act in a certain way. The music that you listen to, the programs that you watch, the social media channels that you follow, they're all your influences. And the spiritual masters are saying, be wary of what you are allowing yourself to influence you by.
Just to add to that, does that mean everything is sangat?
Sangat means that which is close to you. The word sang, that which you keep near to you. And the Guru is teaching you, be wary of your sangat. What do you keep close to you? Whatever you keep close to you will impact you in some way, will influence you in some way. Sure.
Isn't that like a robotic life anyways? Because we get up every day, we go to work, then we come home, we cook dinner, like in between we meditate, and then again we back to sleep. Same things happens again and again.
Yes.
So how do you then break that and how do you change that environment?
It's a very good question, and it's all related to what we're talking about, which is if we have a monotonous life where everything is the same, we go to the same places of work and we do the same actions and we come back to the same environments, how do you make that change? Sometimes you can't change your external environment. This is where the wisdom of Shabad comes in. There's one thing you can change, which is the story that's going on in your mind. You can actively interrupt those stories. Change your words, the words that are going on in your mind, change that story, and you begin to start changing some of the influence and the actions that are happening around you. So if you can't change your external environment, change your internal environment. Be conscious of what are those thoughts that are coming up and override them with something higher, something greater. So that's something but it's harder to do, easier to just change your environment. So this is where Ardas works. Let me tell you what I mean by Ardas. Too many times our prayers are about something on the outside. The only prayer that you should be doing is about changing things on the inside. Every day, if at the beginning of every day and at the end of every day, you made a declaration out to the universe saying, today, let me not get angry. Just stick to one. Don't wish for hundreds of different things. One thing. Wake up every morning and let's say anger. Your anger is something that you want to change. Today, universe, please do not let me get angry. Same prayer at night. Same prayer the next morning. Same prayer at night. Watch in 7 days how much that will begin to impact your life. Because it's focused. It's one thing. It's not about, please don't let the other person get angry. You can't pray for somebody else. They have to make their own change. You have to be your own change. But focus it, and that works surprisingly fast. When you just stick to one prayer, which is about you and an action that you want to take. And don't dilute it with anything else. Every morning, every evening, make the same prayer. See how quickly that change will come. Because now you've brought that habit right to the forefront of your mind. You're literally confronting it every morning, every day. If you want to add another step, by the end of every day, have a little think. Did I get angry today? Oh, I got angry at that bit. Tomorrow I'm going to be aware of that. And this is why this whole game is really just a game about you understanding your mind more, understanding your health, yourself. But we're always focused on the outside. We want to change everything on the outside. We never want to go in here. We never want to fix this. Like everything that's going on in here is fine. This is where the battle is.
Being the eldest daughter in a Punjabi family, you tend to hear the word Kismet quite a lot. And there's a large discussion around conditioning and whether we are the doer or not. It's interesting to me that science is now starting to scratch the surface of what our gurus and even the Vedas in India have known for thousands of years. It's semantics in that we talk about source creation, but even science now is realizing that all matter is made of energy. And my understanding of how our Gurbani talks about the ultimate intelligence is similar to that. The comment I had was the Gurbani itself is a prescription for self-actualization. There's been a lot of similar questions from the Sangha today around, well, if there is Kismet, or there is fate, or karma, are we relinquished of responsibility? My personal understanding is it's about awareness. And the Gurbani or the Shabad
or all the different sayings are all around how we get that space of awareness. Ego sits in the realm of the mind, and whether it's our external influences and conditionings, when we're on automatic pilot, we don't realize or we think we're making those decisions. My question to you, Satpal, is in this time in history right now, I loved that you mentioned none of us know what happens after we die. There are many people who talk about it, prophesize about it, but the truth is none of us actually know what the truth is. In terms of your lived experience around all the challenges that we have now, you watch the same news we do, you live in the UK, you have the same pressures that most might share here around living costs, etc. How have you found a way to elevate from the conditionings of this time in history?
You asked, in part of your comment, you said, are we relinquished from our responsibilities? I want you to go much further than being free from your responsibilities. You are relinquished from yourself. You are relinquished from your idea of yourself. That is spirituality. That is real oneness. The only conclusion to your spiritual practice has to be, I am not here. When you are not here, you are very comfortable with whatever this body and mind is going to do next. I am not the mind, I'm not the body. It is all you. And I love all of these questions, but really the only question is, am I here? As long as I am here, I'm not connected. The wisdom teaches us, जब हम होते तब तू नहीं, अब तू ही मैं नहीं. As long as I am here, you are not here. When you are here, I cannot be here. And a very simple analogy is two people can't drive the same car at the same time. Who's driving? Are you driving or is God driving? As long as you're driving, come up with all the questions that you want. Am I this? Am I that? Will I go here after I die? This, that? How do I do this?
Surrender then. Actually, that might be a more pointed, accurate question.
So then the question is, how do I actually get to that point? The answer is, how am I here now? What is the mechanism by which I believe I am here? And the mechanism is this internal voice that keeps telling me I'm here. But it doesn't say I'm here. It says, oh, look at what she's wearing. Oh, what, did that guy really do that? Is he looking at me funny? That's the mechanism by which your I amness is continuing. So you have this internal dialogue, this voice that always has something to say, always has an opinion, always has a way to think that something else is going wrong and never questions itself. The Guru's technique to combat the ego is to say, stop singing your own praises all the time. Switch the conversation that's going on in here to you, you, you. This is you, this is you, this is you. Everything is you. You do not even entertain any time when your inner voice is talking about you. That's the theory. The reality is, your inner voice is going to keep coming back again and again and again. And as soon as you catch yourself, if you are lucky, if you've had enough of that wisdom hitting your brain, if you're lucky, one of the answers that will come up is say, stop thinking about yourself, go back to your meditation. This is a profound wisdom which allows you to meditate no matter what you're doing. You do not need to get up and go sit in a cave somewhere. You don't need to pay thousands of dollars to go at some fancy ashram or some fancy meditation retreat. Right here, right now, it is available to you. The only thing is, can I switch the dialogue that's going on within myself? And once that is your single point focus of your life, is to recognize the futility of your own self and to genuinely have no interest in the sense of self, knowing that this is an illusion. To genuinely want to reconnect, not with some other thing called God, but with the reality of what this is. This is genuinely not me. I did not make this body. That is not some spiritual mumbo-jumbo. It is a fact. I have no say in the color of this skin. I have no say in how tall it's going to be or how short it's going to be. I have no say in what my facial features are going to look like. This is genuinely nothing to do with me. And I also have no say in the next thought that's going to come in my mind. I don't even know the next word that's going to come out of my mouth.
Have you found that spiritual teachings are great to learn, but not always easy to apply to your own life? Sometimes we all need a bit of support and guidance from people who know what we're going through and can help us find some answers. The Nanak Naam Facebook group helps you do just that. It's an online community where you can ask any questions about life and get answers from other members of the group. Search for Nanak Naam Community Support and join our free Facebook group today.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhai Sahib ji. Today is my best day ever. I'm glad speaking to you in person. Thank you very much. My question is the spiritual journey that we have been talking here today, the spiritual journey that we've been talking about today. How is that related to those 5 khands Guru Nanak Sahib talk about at the end of Japji Sahib, from Gyan Khand or Dharam Khand to Sach Khand? Like, if you can please touch about how that happens, please.
So the question is, how does the spirituality that we talk about relate to the 5 stages listed in the Japji Sahib called the khands? That's a very big question. The reality is, there aren't 5 stages. There's only 4. If you go through my Japji Sahib series, it goes in detail what all of them are. What it talks about is 4 stages of development. The first stage is that you are placed here. That's called Dharam Khand. You are here already. The first step is already taken for you. What you do here is now for you to question. The world here, in ancient Indian spiritual wisdom, is called Karam Bhumi. The world is a place where you continue to do actions, and based on those actions there will be consequences. So the very first question is, am I doing the right action? So that's where you start to begin to question your life. What am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I not? That's stage 1. To just that moment of self-reflection, because we talked about how life is quite robotic. And we are living this kind of everyday robotic life, and that moment may occur where you start to question, am I doing the right thing? Is there something more? That's step 1. Step 2 is then you have to surround yourself with the right wisdom. First you have to have an interest in doing that. Most of us don't even have an interest. We just get on with our normal life. And even that we must not judge. Whoever is doing that, let them do it. If you are motivated to do something about it, the first thing is, what is the right thing to do? So step 2, Gyan Khand. You must gain the knowledge. Who are the right people that you need to surround yourself with? How do you begin to start answering this question about who am I? What is the nature of me? Am I doing the right thing? What should I be doing in life? You have to surround yourself with that right wisdom. So that's step 2, Gyan Khand. But the hardest step is the next one. Then you have to start making changes. That is Saram Khand. That is the action, when it's no longer just about understanding the wisdom, but actually starting to make the changes within you. And Guru Nanak says, Tithe kadiye surt mat man budh in Saram Khand. The third stage is where, kadiye is a very interesting word. It's like you having a pestle mortar. It's being ground down. Your thinking, your intellect, your wisdom, all of your thinking is starting to be changed. most people never move into this stage. We get very satisfied with, I used to do this, but now I'm going to do this. I used to be going out clubbing every night, now I go to my spiritual center and I'm hanging around with. So they're very comfortable with, I used to look this way, now I look more spiritual, and they're just doing a certain number of actions. But actually, are you going to the next level? Am I beginning to now grind down the sense of ego? That's the Saram Khand. Once you grind down the ego, remember this is a very quick summary of a huge kind of spiritual practice. Once the ego is ground down, what comes out is that I no longer live my life for me. Before that, the ego lives life for you. That is Karam Khand. How you now interact with the world, how you use who you've become. It's that blossoming into something new. Karam Khand ki Bani Jor. In that stage of action, you are now empowered to go out with the world, into the world, and do those things and act in that way. Karam Khand ki Bani Jor. But who is the one now acting? Your ego is gone. Tithe hor na koi hor. Now it is not you acting. You have let go, relinquished yourself of your ego. The divine is acting through you. Oneness is acting through you. Life is now acting through the new, upgraded version of you. Karam Khand ki Bani Jor, Tithe hor na koi hor. This is the true meaning of a warrior. Tithe Jod Mahabal Sur, Tin mein Ram Raya Bharpur. But it's not them. They're not, I'm a spiritual warrior now. It is the divine flowing through them. That is the strength that they get to move on. Those are your 4 stages. The 5th stage is nothing to do with you. Sach Khand Vasai Nirankar. There's not you trying to get to Sach Khand. One of the biggest misconceptions, am I going to get to Sach Khand? It's just, we've replaced another word for the Christian version of heaven, that cloudy, nice place in the sky where there's lots of, angels playing harps, and will I get there? That's what we're doing. We're always deferring our happiness. You can't be happy here, so you create an imagined version of happiness somewhere else. And how do you prove it exists? Oh, you can't prove it exists. You'll only get there when you die. Has anyone gone to that heaven and come back and told us it exists? No, because they did. Right? Don't create that and then just call that Sach Khand. And people use terms like, oh, he's passed away now, he's gone to Sach Khand. If you're not in Sach Khand here, you're not going to go Sach Khand over there. There's no over there. Yeah. But you're not interested in Sach Khand. That's not for you. Sach Khand means the realm of ultimate truth. And in the realm of ultimate truth, all there is ultimate oneness. Sach Khand Vasai Nirankar. Kar kar vekhe nadar nihal. The one who is doing it all. Doing all actions. That is the stage where you realize that step 1, 2, 3, and 4 wasn't me doing it. The divine was doing all of that. And so that's why there are only 4 stages. The 5th one has got nothing to do with you. So very important, but I don't want anyone to be creating this kind of step ladder. Oh, I'm in step 1 now. What step are you in? Are you step 2? I'm level 3. Right? We're not interested in that. Because that's just another way of creating your own ego. I'm on level 4, you're on level 3. Come on, man, let me help you. No, none of that stuff. The entire process is just, am I here? If I'm here, I'm back at level 0.
My question is, since we've been born, our parents have told us that Jidda Rab ne kehna udda hi hona. So Jidda Rab ne kehna udda hi hona. Like you come with a predetermined, pre-written life. And it's a hot topic for debate at our house. Like we say that we have free will and that we can, choose our path. But I guess a few questions that you answered as well, like can you pick your Sangat? Do you have a choice of pulling away from that Sangat? When you're saying that we don't have free will, then we don't have that choice. It's pre-written, right? My question is, how do you explain a pre-written future? Is it pre-written our life?
How do you explain what, sorry?
Is it pre-written our life?
Like a pre-ordained.
Yeah. Everything that's going to happen is going to happen in our life.
Yeah.
Because it's pre-written.
I don't subscribe to the idea that everything is pre-written. So the analogy that makes sense when we talk about something like that is like your entire life is already written out, like a storybook. And you might be sort of in the middle of your life, but all the future things that are going to happen are already determined. And I don't think that that's how it works. That's certainly not my experience. For me, I believe the story is being written at this moment. And there's a beautiful, again, phrase that says, Ji jaat ranga ke nav, sabna likhya vudi ka naam. It says, there are lives of all shapes and sizes and names. They're all being written by this one ever-flowing pen. That divine unfolding of that universe. Call it hukam, call it the flow of life. So it is being written as we speak. So I don't subscribe to the idea that all your future has already been decided. Because the reality is, all that exists is now. There isn't a future. There is just now. There is only oneness in this moment now. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. Now exists. And in this moment, whatever you say, whatever you do, is the thing that catapults the next moment. It is unfolding. This is why I think the word Omkar is so beautiful. Even the way that it's written, it is this continuous, always evolving, always flowing. It comes from the ancient concept of Om, the sound that continues to be made. So I don't think that there is a future you that you're just unfolding into. Now, we seem to still be skirting around this idea of, well, if I don't have any free will, then am I just waiting for the next action to just present itself? Again, notice how some of this conversation, these questions, are still centered around one problematic thing. What about me? Am I? What happens to me next? Notice how your ego just doesn't want to let go. And this wisdom is teaching us, it's not about you. This has nothing to do with you. That is the only thing that you need to be vigilant against, is, am I still believing in the idea that I am? And the answer is always going to be yes. Your mind always wants to retain the ego. How do we overcome that? That should be your only question. And I'm not saying stop all questions here. For you, for your life, for your spiritual quest, the only question is, who is here now? Your ego will say, I am here now. You say, then we need to do something about that. That will have an impact about how your next moment is going to unfold.
So, Satpal Virchi, there's a question that's come in saying that I want to ask about Naam Sadhana. Which Naam should we do Simran with? Is this a specific name which Guruji said, or will any name of God work? Also, please elaborate on difference between Jap and Simran, or Japa and Simran.
The question is around what is the wisdom of reciting one mantra, one word again and again, Naam. And which word should we use? The question is something that you have to ask yourself. What is the word for me that makes me remember oneness? I can say, use this word, but if it's a word that doesn't work for you, has no meaning for you, then abandon it. There are many traditions that will say, no, this is the only name. The reality is, they have no idea what they're talking about. In our own homes, to our own family members, we call our loved ones by one name, their friends call them by something else, their colleagues at work call them by something else. They're all referring to the same one person. When you're happy with them, you call them by one name. When you're angry with them, you call them by a different name. It's still the same person. You're not changing that. But in that moment, that is the name that works for you. So why should you limit yourself to just one name? You have access to all the names. Use all of them. In the Jap Sahib, Guru Gobind Singh Ji goes through so many different explanations. But he starts by saying that I don't really know what name you have. In the middle of the Jap Sahib, he says that you are aname, you have no name. But in the end, he does something beautiful. In the Jap Sahib, if you notice at how many different verses that he chooses, he stops at 199. Because he shows that in the end, this thing can't be completed. There's always a missing name. In Islam, they say there are 99 names for God. Because there's always one name that you can't quite put your finger on. That Guru Nanak very beautifully calls the true name, Satnam. The very fact that it is its own name. Its very presence, the very truth of isness, the truth of this moment is its own name. There is no name that you can put to the very truth that this moment is. Oneness is, life is. What you want to call it whatever you want, but this thing has no name. So, if it has no name, pick whichever name works for you. Now the question is, what shall I do with that name? And then that's the second part of the question is, what is the difference between japa and simran? And the difference is simply one is active and one is inactive. Jap is an active process of repeating that name again and again and again. That's how you start. You keep at every moment, at every opportunity, while you're washing the dishes, you have a choice at that point. Is your mind going to just wander off and start planning the next holiday? Or can you be meditating through that process? Can you recognize the God of that moment by using that active process of repeating that name? When you're in the shower, when you're driving, when you're going for a walk, when you're having a conversation with someone. There are so many opportunities throughout your day where you could be thinking about something else, or you could be actively training your mind to create the habit to recognize the God of this moment. And the way you do that is just choose a name and just repeat it again and again and again. And if it's not a name, a phrase will do. This is you, tu hi tu. That's not a name. That's just you. You are here. You are here. This is you. I see you. I see you. I always say to people, the easiest mantra to start with if you don't come from a mantra tradition is thank you. Really simple. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Try that. Doesn't offend you. You don't have to, it's not a religious term. Some people, they don't want any phrase because it sounds too religious. They think immediately they're going to be indoctrinated in some sort of cult. So that's why I say pick your own name. Pick whatever phrase brings you back into that state of awareness. Once you become familiar with doing that again, that japa, it becomes a japa jap. The repetition that does not require repetition. It is just happening in the background. It's just there all the time. That's a very high, sophisticated
level that the spiritual masters have reached, where they're not having to even actively do it. It's so intrinsic to their nature that for us, the ajapa jap that's going on here is the ego, the voice of the ego. The constant remembrance of I amness is going on to the point at which you don't even notice it. It's just so, it's so intrinsic to who you are. The masters have reversed that. They've worked so actively at removing the sense of self and actively creating this awareness of oneness that it now becomes second nature to them. That's ajapa jap, where you just remember all the time. That is Simran. Simran means to remember. Remember without remembering. But it starts with that active process. What I love about this wisdom is it doesn't ask anything else of you. It doesn't care what you look like. It doesn't care what gender you are, what background you are. It doesn't care how many years you've been religious or not. At any moment, are you in remembrance right now? And it levels the playing field. No matter who the other people are in your life that have said, oh, well, you're not doing this, and you're not waking up at this time, and you're not wearing the right clothes, and you're not eating the right food, and all those things that people like to throw at you. The simple question is, are you in remembrance? Are you meditating now? Even while you're listening to someone else talk, where is your mind now? So it's a beautiful tradition. It's a beautiful wisdom. And what is very important for you to understand, this wisdom is relevant to everyone. It can be used by anyone, black or white. Anyone can use this, and everyone should use this.
I've got a million questions, so I know, but if you could please recommend translated Guru Granth Sahib, so we can go back, something that helped you, because I've looked online and there are a lot of versions and I'm not sure if they say the same thing. I have heard your Japji Sahib translation, and by the time I reached number 5, I forgot what was said in number 1. So this is a request. If you could make a condensed version, I could finish that quickly. That would be great. Because I haven't reached number 52 yet. But I've heard what you said about hukam, and this is a question. I've heard about what you said about hukam, and you said it is very unsettling. Yeah, it is very unsettling for me as well. To think that the hukam is not just the good, but also the good and the bad and the ugly. And I cannot come to terms with that. I cannot come to terms that somebody is being raped and I say, I'm sorry, that's a hukam. It is very unsettling to me. If somebody is in pain, I don't know what to say to myself without being so disturbed. And also, I don't know what to say to them to give them or help them with any kind of peace, if that's possible. You know, I'm sorry if it upsets anyone, but that is very, very personal.
No, thank you. That's a really important question. You said that when you watched the first video and got to the 5th, you forgot what the first video was. I actually forgot what the first question was. What was the first question? What was? Oh, okay. Yes, the translation. Thank you. First question is what translations of Gurbani of Guru Granth Sahib do I use or do I recommend? The translations that are out there at the moment, I know it's very easy for people to belittle them, but I always say, and having read a lot of these translations and studied them in detail, the ones that are out there at the moment are pretty good. I say they're about 90 to 95% good. There's always going to be some nuance that they miss out on. There's always going to be some things that they get wrong. But for anyone who has no background in reading it in the original language, please use the translation. You're going to get most of the wisdom. So the standard translations that are there at the moment are highly recommended. Definitely use them. Once you become familiar with those and you want to take it to the next level, I find the best translations are not in English. The best are actually explanations within Punjabi themselves. And so for those, Professor Sahib Singh I would highly recommend, because what he does is something very interesting, is that he not only translates things, well, he doesn't translate, he explains in modern, everyday sort of Punjabi language. If you're able to read it, highly recommend always looking up any shabad with those. But he also provides a word-by-word breakdown. And that's a very good way to start learning Gurbani in a way that you can now read verses of the shabad and you can see where the English translations have gone wrong, because you're so familiar with some of the deeper meanings within that. If you want to take it to another level, I would recommend the Faridkot Tika. And that is harder because it's written probably around 150 years ago or something like that. And so it uses quite old and ancient Punjabi and a mixture of sort of an old Punjabi and old Hindi. So Faridkot Tika is also highly recommended. I haven't read all the English translations, so I don't know which ones else are out there. I know that there are projects going on to create new translations of them as well. So it's always worth looking at that. And don't worry that you rely on translations. I still, every day, if I'm reading a verse, I still have the English translations. I still have the Professor Sahib Singh. Even though I could probably make sense of the Gurbani, it's still, English is my first language. I think in English. So it's nice to immediately be able to see the English and then look at the word-by-word breakdown. So don't think of reaching a point where you don't ever need to rely on the translations. Use all of them. Just have all of them at your disposal. That was the short question. The second question is a very pertinent one, which is when difficult scenarios arise, how do we make peace with them? How do we help ourselves to accept those things, and how do we help others? And you can't just take almost a cop-out approach that says, it's all hukum, it's all oneness, just accept it and move on. The reality is that is the right answer. Whether you can accept it or not, everything is hukum. And for those who are not familiar with this word, hukum means the divine command. It is divinely ordained. It is what it is. It has come from some higher place. Whether you can accept the atrocities that are happening in the world are as the world is right now. I want to help you try and, if you can't accept that, I want you to maybe look at it in a different way. The ancient language uses an analogy and a way of looking at the divine in a way that probably doesn't work with us anymore. So it's still, there is this kind of God and it's His choice and He's chosen for this to happen. And when we do things like that, I think in today's day and age, we can't quite resonate with those things anymore. But another way to look at hukum, and the way I feel is the translation of the word that makes most sense to me is reality. It is the reality that is present at this moment. Hukum is reality, which means whether you like it or not, is it real right now? Is it real that scenario has happened? Yes, it's reality. So that's a much more healing way to start to understand and comprehend and come to terms with the world as it is right now. That doesn't mean that you throw that in someone's face when they themselves are going through that atrocity. But the reality is the reality. The event has happened. The question is now, what are you going to do about it? When some of the worst things that we would never wish on anyone has happened, it has already happened, it's there. That's the reality of that moment. Now what do you do? How do you come to terms with it? How do you respond to it? And that is where your spiritual practice kicks in. How am I going to respond to this moment? It is not whether I like the scenario, whether I can rationalize it, whether I can justify it. None of those things. The universe is not asking for your permission. The universe has no care what you think it should do. Nor does it respond to your prayers. And for those who've seen some of my older videos, the example, the light-hearted example that seems to work quite well with this is, imagine that it's your wedding day, and on your wedding day you've got one prayer: I hope it doesn't rain today. That's your only prayer: I hope it doesn't rain today. And a mile down the road there's a farmer who's saying, I hope it rains today. Which one should the universe listen to? Both? Rain on 1 mile down the road and no rain for you? The thing is, the reality is that if it's going to rain, it's going to rain. If it's not going to rain, it's not going to rain. If it rains, the farmer is going to say, yes, the universe heard my prayer. And the bride who's getting married is going to say, why did the universe do that to me? The reality is, you're not that special. The universe is not waiting to hear your prayer. It's not weighing up between, oh, well, he asked, but she asked really nicely as well. Which one should I do? Well, I gave hers last time, so this time I'm going. This is how we talk about the universe. This is how it's infantile the way we talk about it. But the reality is, the universe does whatever it does. It's an unfolding. The rain has nothing to do with you. It's to do with the clouds and the weather patterns all around the world. Whether you pray about it or whether you don't pray about it. This is why I think the word reality is very important. Are you comfortable with reality? Now let's go back to Guru Nanak's wisdom. Hukam razai chalana. Are you in alignment with reality? Most of us are not in alignment with reality. Most of us look at reality and our mind says, well, that shouldn't have happened. Reality shouldn't look like this. I know what reality should be. And then you think that what's in your head is more important, more intelligent than the divine intelligence. So are you in alignment with reality? The question that comes before that is very important. Kiv satyara hoye. How do I become one with the truth? Kiv kude tutte pal. How do I knock down the wall of falsehood? Hukam razai chalana. Walk in alignment with reality. Can you at every moment recognize the divineness of that moment? Can you recognize this is you, O universal oneness, call it whatever you want, whatever name works for you. Can you recognize the hand of God in every moment? Are you there or are you in here? Whether you are in alignment with it or not will determine how peaceful you are. The further your idea of life deviates from the reality of this moment, the more suffering you're going to have. To alleviate suffering, your own suffering, align yourself with what life is doing right now. Whatever life wants to do, let it do. Tera pana meetha lage. Tera kiya meetha lage. Whatever you're doing is sweet to me. It's nothing to do with me. You know what you're doing. I am not even here to view what you are doing. You are here witnessing what you are doing. I am not here to judge what the universe is doing. The universe is doing, and the universe is observing what it is doing. Nothing to do with me. And this is where we have to address every single question. The answer is always oneness. I like to say that when we were children and we used to study maths, You'd go in the textbook and all the answers used to be at the back. So if the teacher would set you some homework, you couldn't just go and write the answer from the back. The teacher wanted to know, how did you get to that answer? Do you understand how you get to that answer? Guru Nanak does something similar. In the wisdom, he starts with the answer. And then he shows his working out. How do I get to that answer? How can you get to that answer? The answer is always oneness. The answer is always, this is you, this is you, this is you, this is you. Are you there? Can you get yourself there? Get yourself there. Show that you can be at peace no matter what is happening. And that will be the help that you can provide other people. Because you will become that beacon of light. You will show other people that this is how to respond in this moment. There's a beautiful definition of spirituality. Bliss no matter what is happening. So much so that within the Sikh tradition, the fifth master, Guru Arjan Dev Ji, was so committed to showing you that you can be blissful no matter what's happening, he voluntarily allowed himself to be burnt alive. To show you it is possible even at this point for me to be blissful, he had to do that to demonstrate that this wisdom really stands true even at the worst moments. He is literally on fire, being burnt, but in his mind, he is calm and cool. Can you imagine? What can you go through that comes close to the trauma that your spiritual master put himself through? And if your spiritual master can go through that much, it is a demonstration to you that he's not someone special. You too can get to that place if you follow the wisdom that he taught. That this wisdom teaches you, you too can get to that point. That is the human potential that he had to demonstrate. He had to demonstrate the pinnacle of what a human being can go through and still be at peace. The definition of spirituality is peace no matter what is happening.
You know how you said, and we know it, there's no heaven or hell there. There are people committing horrendous crimes here, drugs and everything. So they say we can control our atmosphere. We can continue to do what we do. It's a very fearful thought. Like, if people think all is here and I am in control, I'll do whatever I want to do.
That's a very important question. That does it mean that you can commit all sorts of atrocities in the world and say, hey, it's nothing to do with me? How many people who have learnt this wisdom have ended up there? Do you end up in that place where you say, this is my golden ticket to do whatever I want? Most of the people who end up learning this wisdom don't go down that path. Because, remember, I can do whatever I want is still rooted in the I amness and the ego. And anybody who is acting out of ego has no spiritual wisdom. They might use something that a spiritual master says as an escape clause. Oh, I can get away with it because it's nothing to do with me. But the truth is, even in that, they are in their own hell. All of us, while you're in your ego, you are in hell. Make no mistake about it. This life can be a heaven or this life can be a hell. The determining factor is your ego. So let them get away with whatever they want to get away with. Doesn't mean they're having a great life. When they look at themselves in the mirror, they're not in a good place. When they sit in the quietness of their own mind, when they go to sleep at night, they're not in a good place. So we must even show compassion towards them. That they don't know what they're doing. The beautiful words of Christ, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Even when they were committing atrocities against Christ, he says, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. Look at that level of humility. Show mercy on them. He could have said, save me. He said, no, save them. Forgive them. Because they don't know what they're doing. The ego doesn't know what it's doing. It is just acting out of this continuing selfishness. So nobody who studied this wisdom ends up in that place of, I'll just do whatever I want.
Children that are quite young, who can't even go into that spiritual path. Like, I being a teacher, I can see little kids vaping in primary school as well. So how do you teach those sorts of kids that, because they're not at that level of going into the spiritual pathway?
This is a very important question. How do you teach this to children? I know a lot of what we're talking about today can seem quite mind-heavy, quite intellectual. But all of the things that we're talking about cannot stay at this mind level. They have to come from your practice. That is something that you can show kids. You don't have to explain the theory. You can simply demonstrate to them, how do you feel right now? Are you peaceful or are you agitated? Even children know, Miss, I don't feel good. Mommy, this doesn't feel good. They know from a very early stage what feels blissful, calm, and then you can demonstrate, okay, you feel agitated, let's show you how do we get back into the peace state. What do you need to do? And maybe for them it's something that doesn't involve sitting down because they can't sit still. Say, okay, let's go outside. Let's go for a walk. Take your shoes off, walk on the grass. Little simple techniques that you can use. You will know how to use those techniques when you yourself know how to get into peace. And one of the questions we get all the time is, how do I teach this to kids? Have you learnt it yourself? Do you know? Otherwise, what you're doing is saying, I don't want to teach this to myself. I'll do something that sounds good. Let's teach this to our children. We get this question all the time. How do I teach this to children? Teach yourself. Then teach your children. If you don't know it, your kids will pick up on it so fast. They can see when you yourself are not practicing this wisdom. Then you can tell them all the theory that you want. They can see you're not doing it. This hasn't had an impact on you first.
Yeah. So my question is that we are talking about spirituality, the theory around it, that it's oneness, enlightenment. But like in olden days, people used to go up to Himalayas or in some caves and sit there for years and get that enlightenment, detach themselves. But living in the current scenario, we don't want to detach ourselves from our loved ones, from our family. So what are the subtle things or the changes we can make, like practices we can do in our everyday life so that we can live with wisdom, start living with wisdom and attain to those levels?
So we sort of covered some of those things already today, but the practical steps is prioritize peace. At every moment, prioritize your inner peace. And that's something that whether you're walking, whether you're out and about, whether you're working, you can always come back to yourself and check. Where am I right now? You know, I had a friend of mine once say that at work they had a calendar appointment every 60 minutes, and they would say like a mindful minute. And so a calendar appointment would go off at all the colleagues, and every hour you just have a little ping that goes off that says, okay, we've worked for 59 minutes, let's take a minute out. Where am I? Am I acting out of peace? And so there are lots of little things that you can do like that, which is prioritize your inner peace. Make that something that's genuinely a priority. You know? And the hardest is when you have kids. Because they will do everything to test your inner peace. Right? And they will also know, as we talked about before, that they will also know that you don't respond well when we do this or when we do that, and yet they'll still push your buttons. So these are These are the real challenges. And what I love about this wisdom is it was made for working people, working mums and dads. You don't need to go and sit in a cave for a couple of years to do this. This is a very practical wisdom that can be done uthat baitat sovat now. While you're up, while you're sitting, while you're lying down, at all moments of your day, because you don't have to meditate in some formal way. It's just something that can be going on subtly within your mind. So I know it sounds like it's very complicated, but the reality is you could either get up and leave and just go back into your old ways of thinking, or you can just ask yourself, can I try this? Can I try this for the next 60 minutes? You have to be a little bit alert with your own mindset. And notice also that sometimes you can go for days and then you can catch yourself and say, like, I haven't meditated at all. I haven't remembered at all. And then at that point, you can either beat yourself up and say, oh, I'm such a terrible person. I'm back at square one. Or this is why this phrase, Gur Prasad, is so beautiful. The moment that you remember, you bow in gratitude. Thank you. This is your grace. This is your blessing that I get to remember in this moment. So don't ruminate over the past again and again and again. At this moment, where am I now? It's a very simple question. Where am I now? Where is my mind now?
Hi Satpal, thank you for being here and sharing the wisdom. I'm curious to know what made you choose the path of spirituality, and when did you come to a realization that you want to follow that path? Was it something you chose to do in childhood, or you look around the world and say, now I want to go on a different path to live a happily ever life and blissful life?
See, there's someone who hasn't been listening. There's no choice. There was no choice. There was genuinely no choosing involved. But I'll expand on your question. I grew up in a relatively religious family. I call it the Sunday Sikhs. Monday to Saturday, you get on with your life. On Sunday, you go worship for that little bit, pat yourself on the back, you've done a little bit of good stuff, come back home. The truth of the matter is that while growing up as a child, we were taught the prayers, I was taught the history, you were taught the customs and the traditions. There was no teaching around meditation. Meditation and self-awareness, self-reflection, divine connection, oneness, all these things were almost alien to me. You just knew how to be a good religious boy. That's how I was raised. As long as you sound the part, you look the part. And it's not a criticism on how I was brought up. That's just what my parents knew. That's just how they were brought up. And it was only in my very early 20s where I met someone who I call my first spiritual mentor, who just began to open the gates of curiosity for me, having conversations like we're having today, talking to me, and really for the first time me hearing something about a tradition that I thought I knew everything about, having been brought up and grown up in this tradition, and just being completely wonderstruck by, what is this? What is this part of the wisdom that I've never heard? And what it did for me was it unlocked a very deep level of curiosity to know more about it, to figure out more. And I just went on my own quest to think, actually, I thought I knew this, but I don't know anything about this wisdom. Let me go and read it. Let me go and study it. Let me actually go and find out what is this wisdom saying. Because you'll be surprised the number of people who are brought up in religious traditions but actually have no idea what the wisdom is. All they just know is the customs and the traditions. And so they can pretend in front of everybody else who's also pretending. And it opened up a level of curiosity in me, and I was like, do I really know what this wisdom is? And I don't think I've ever stopped. I've just continuously been inspired to learn, and I suppose for me, I'm genuinely seeing the benefits in my own life. It's not just an intellectual exercise that I learned. It was when I learned that wisdom, and then I was also shown how to meditate, and I practiced meditation, and then you learn more and you go deeper and deeper you go into it, you see, wow, this has real practical implications in our lives. I can see the benefits in my own life of this wisdom when I'm faced with all the scenarios that we get faced with. And so that to me was really the point at which where I realized that we have a beautiful wisdom that almost nobody in the tradition knows about. No one is talking about it. Certainly the religious centers are not talking about it. The religious scholars who sit on stages and talk for hours can talk without ever mentioning the wisdom. And so I was very clear that I am not the most qualified person to do this. But I was inspired enough that said, somebody has to do something. And I still say to this day, please don't listen to me. I really don't know what I'm talking about. I would love for you to go, and all I'm trying to do is unlock the same level of curiosity that got unlocked in me. Go and study it for yourself. Go and figure it out for yourself. Practice it, learn it, see how it's working for you. But the reason I laugh at the question in the beginning was it really wasn't a choice. It was something that just unlocked and happened within me, and I'm really glad that it did. And if I've benefited so much, it's really upon me to try and share that with as many people as possible. That's all I'm trying to do. And I've been very fortunate to then have that curiosity about, well, what are some of the other traditions? And there is so much wisdom in some of these other traditions. There is so much to be gained from studying original Hindu scriptures. It is phenomenal. And the same wisdom has been present since the beginning of mankind. You know, I don't need you to become my religion. That's not what anyone is doing here. I don't need you to convert to anything. Convert your own mind. You go down that path of curiosity, and you know it's difficult, and sometimes you go down this path and there are people who within your own life you have to separate yourself from, and you realize, I can't hang around these people anymore. It's no longer an accurate reflection of who I am. But the reward of it is so rewarding that it's worth you kind of going down that path. So I just want to inspire as many people, please go and go down this path. You won't regret it.
First of all, gratitude to this divine moment. Thank you for sharing. And I'm just loving this space, very common, safe space. So my question is, we've been talking about oneness. Now, in that oneness, how do we actually differentiate, I guess, our self-esteem and our false ego, the concept of, ego, and this is not true. So how do we actually differentiate that?
So say that again. Differentiate between?
Differentiate between the self-esteem and a false ego, or the identity of false ego that we carry.
What is the first word in self-esteem? How can you have self-esteem? The wisdom teaches us that whatever good is happening, it is your doing, it is your goodness. So if there is confidence within you, it is your goodness. If there is courage and bravery within you, it is your goodness. And the prayer that is done is, allow me to replace all of my negative gun, the word gun is there, my negative qualities with your positive qualities. So we do not assign goodness to the ego. The ego is associated with only negative things. The ego is associated with, you can't have a good ego. Well, you can. And this is a very dangerous thing. The people who believe they're good people, the people who believe they're spiritual people, they can do no wrong. In fact, some of the worst atrocities have been done by the spiritual ego. And the spiritual ego is a very subtle one. It's a very difficult one to see. Because the spiritual ego comes across as, I'm so humble. Right? But even the beginning of that sentence is, I am. This is where the wisdom is quite clear. There is no room for I am. There is no room for the self. There is no self-esteem. You can't have a nice, polished, shiny ego. We don't want that. Get rid of it altogether. Not because it is just something that you must do, because it is genuinely not real. It is there, but it's not the truth. It is not the true you. It is the false you. It is the fake version of you. There is a true version of you that has nothing to do with this. It is the big you, the divine you, the divine spirit that is within you, the universal oneness, the force of life that is within you. That is the real you. Why would you want to limit yourself to the small fake version of you when the infinite version of you is sitting there waiting? And that infinite version of you is peaceful. That infinite version of you is loving. That infinite version of you is kind. Why would you want the self-esteem of the ego when you have the divine ego that you can take, the divine oneness? You don't need your I amness. And that is, if there's any part of you that is holding on and saying, oh no, but that sounds too much, I don't want to do that. Whose voice is that? That is the voice of the ego. And you will have that voice because that's all you've known. You've only known the ego. And the ego has convinced you, I'm your best friend. Don't listen to anyone else. I've been there for you right from the start. I'm the one that's helped you all along the way. This I am. But that I am is the one that's also suffering.
So Veerji, how do we address ourselves? Because I've been listening to you since 2019, COVID times. And for a long time, I've listened to many podcasts, many interviews once you had with your wife. But for a long time, I was very confused to how to address. Like, first sentence is I am. That's how I'm going to talk. And I was very confused for a very long time that how can I start my sentence without addressing myself?
Yeah.
How do we do that?
That's a very good question. The word I am is not what you need to worry about. It's a very useful phrase. If you go to someone and say, I am hungry, it's fine. It's a perfectly valid sentence. It's how we communicate as human beings to each other. Otherwise, you just go to someone and say, hungry. Sometimes we do that as well, right? It's like the quickest way to get to what we need to say. The word I am is not the problem. The concept I am is the problem.
When it comes out of ego, then it's
When you believe that the thing that's in here, you believe that I am here as something separate from all of this. I am me. The very belief in I am me is the thing that you need to worry about, not the sentence I am, not the phrase I am. The phrase is a useful phrase. The idea of I am is something that you must deal with. And it's very simple to deal with that. Stop repeating the I am mantras that you keep saying all day. It is very important for us to remember this concept. You are always reciting a mantra. All day, every day. You're doing Simran all day. You're repeating a name all day. That's it. In fact, you'll notice as soon as you wake up in the morning, that mental chatter starts happening. So the Guru simply says, well, if that's what your mind is doing all day, simply swap out. Who is doing it? You are doing it. You need to do this. My mom always tells me this story that in the town or the village that she grew up with, there was an elderly lady, very spiritually connected, and she referred to herself as Ramji. So she would not say, I need to get up now. She says, Ramji needs to get up now. Ramji is hungry now. And so that just became her natural voice. And it's so beautiful. And it's such a simple technique. And so you simply have to be willing. This is why it is being a spiritual warrior. You have to be willing to kill the I am. You have to be willing to go that far. This is spiritual suicide. That is what this is. Not because we've created an enemy out of the ego, because the ego has not served you. The ego has not served you. The ego has restricted you and locked you into a false definition of what you are. The ego has convinced you you're just this. The masters are trying to convince you you're this. This is what you are. And the mechanism is change the language. Change your thoughts. Don't worry about the words. The words will come out. They are an after effect of what's going on in here first. Deal with that.
If you enjoy learning spiritual teachings and you're looking to deepen your understanding, the most effective way is to learn with a group of friends. Right now, you can set up your very own Nanak Naam meetup group from the comfort of your own homes. Gather your friends, family members or colleagues and start your very own wisdom group by visiting livingwithwisdom.org. There, you'll find a range of Nanak Naam courses designed specifically for groups that you can watch together and discuss. A growing number of people have already started their very own wisdom groups, and it's having a huge positive impact on their lives. Find out how easy it is to start your own wisdom group by visiting livingwithwisdom.org.
Hi, so my question was just about what we mentioned earlier about Japji Sahib and the different levels, like with Karam Khan and all the other different levels. So this is something like you mentioned before, and it's just something I was a bit confused about. So you've mentioned that we're all part of the oneness, but then when you discuss the levels, you said we make actions that help us join the oneness, like progress through the levels. So are we already part of the oneness, or we're trying to become part of the oneness?
It's a very important question. You are always part of the oneness, but you don't know that you're part of the oneness. You're realizing that you are part of the oneness. The whole game is right now your understanding of yourself. If you were to honestly ask yourself, who is here right now? The only real honest answer that you can give is me. I am here right now. The example that I give is that you are a drop of water that is already in the ocean. You simply don't know that you're in the ocean. The wave is never separate from the ocean, but it just believes in its own individuality. You believe that you are separate. The wave doesn't know that it's part of the ocean, and the human doesn't know that it is part of God. So you are always connected. The spiritual journey is simply, can you unwind and unravel that ego that has very neatly wound itself up and created a place within your mind. You have to unravel it to see what's really there underneath.
Yeah, so we're in the process of trying to realize that we're part of that oneness. So now, like, the second part of my question was, if we really are just an insignificant drop in this whole river or this ocean, like, why does it even matter what we do, or if we do even realize that we're part? Obviously, we want to do that because that's how we get fulfillment, but does it even matter if we do realize that? And also the other part that I was thinking about earlier, how you mentioned that good and bad are all part of the oneness. So then what is to determine what is good and what is bad? Like, we're taught since a young age what is good and what is bad, but if it's all part of the oneness, what is to say, this is good and this is not meant to happen?
Like, something which is bad for us could be good for someone else. But we all have our own thinking.
See, now you're starting to ask some really fundamental questions about the nature of reality, the nature of how we work, the nature of how society functions, what is good, what is bad. Now go back to the wisdom. And this is why I keep saying, please read this wisdom. Please, again and again and again. Don't just listen to what someone is saying. Go back and read it. The number of times that the wisdom teaches us, there is no good and there is no bad, there is only you. It says it again and again and again. There is no good and bad. How can there be good and bad? That's a duality. Everything is you. The only thing that determines whether something is good or bad is your ego. When we receive something, we call it good. When we lose something, we call it bad. There are things that, as a human society, we've agreed are not desirable. In order for humans to function together, we've all got to play our part. And if one person is acting out and working just solely out for their own ego, in fact, they're doing so much harm to everyone else. That's not desirable. Do you see how the language needs to change a little bit? Good or bad makes it sound very black and white. And maybe from a simplistic way, for just conversation's sake, you're absolutely right. We'll just say that's bad, that's good. But when you start to look within yourself, you realize that what we really mean is this is not going to work. This works for certain outcome. For society to function, that's not going to work. But you can now do that using the words good and bad, but knowing that it's all part of that same reality. And let's move away from this idea that human beings are ever going to fix themselves. There is no utopia coming where everyone else is perfect. That is not the reality that's been created. The reality is chaos. The reality is the ego. And very few people get to lift themselves above this and are able to take a step back and view the reality for what it really is. Now, going back to your first question as well, why do I need to bother? It sounds too much hard work. If it's all the oneness, and I'm just an insignificant drop in this ocean, why do I even need to make a difference? It doesn't make a difference. It only makes a difference to you. Do you want to be trapped in this prison, or do you want to set yourself free? It makes no difference to anyone else.
Can I just add one last thing?
One more question?
Yeah, just like part of what I was asking. Yeah, it was just about like, so I get the part where we're trying to realize and free ourselves from this, but I also meant like our good deeds, do they even mean anything? Like, you know how I go like, oh, I want to do something good today, help someone. Like, why does it even matter if it's, like all of this is just a facade and I should just focus on freeing myself? Is that selfish or?
You're not, what is the phrase? No man is an island? You don't live on an island on your own. You are part of a community. That's also the reality. You do interact with each other. You could act out of your ego, but very quickly that will have its own consequences. If you are selfish, you act only in your self-interest. If you speak in ways that only benefits you, if you act in ways that only benefits you, that'll have a consequence. There's no right or wrong. There's only consequences. There's actions and there's reactions. Whatever you do will have a consequence. Now you could go and say, well, I don't need to do anything good because it doesn't really matter. It matters to the person who you do good to. It matters to them. Like, I don't want you to get so intellectual that you somehow step away from the reality that we are social animals. We do live with each other. We do have to engage with each other. We do interact with each other. Like, there's a very practical side to the life. Otherwise, you end up in what some of the ancient traditions did, which you end up and you just go and live in a mountain somewhere. So I don't want to interact with anyone. I can't figure out whether I should be good or bad or what I should do. So I just won't engage with anyone. And that's what a lot of the spiritual traditions were doing at the time. So I want you to understand that what we're talking about is a very, very doable, very practical spiritual tradition. This wisdom is really made for everyday working people, everyday parents, in everyday scenarios.
Thank you so much. Today I've learnt so much. I just wanted to ask, so spirituality obviously teaches us the importance of eliminating an inflated sense of self and preserving inner peace and accepting oneness. However, certain institutions or industries that we regularly engage with, such as university,
promotes perfectionism and competitiveness. So I was just wondering what practices you suggest to avoid being caught up in this and, being overly self-critical on the journey.
It's an interesting one, because I wouldn't want anything that we talk about to interfere with the more practical side of life. You are at university to learn. You're here to learn how to think, how to analyze, how to critique. And part of that is to analyze and critique your own ways of thinking. And you can do all of that, but at the back, you yourself know that it's all a facade. And so the way I like to think about it is, when you're playing a board game, you can be really invested in the game, but at the back of your mind, you know that it's a game. So you're playing all the parts and you're losing and then you're winning and then you're trying to compete against someone else and you want to make sure that you win over that other person. That's okay. That's the game that you're playing. But you know you're not real. You know you're not those pieces. You're playing it very actively. But at the back of your mind, you're also, you have a sense of aloofness and detachment from it.
Sasrikal Paji, pleasure to be here. I have a question regarding the ego choices as well. Is not every step we do determined by our ego? Imagine, I love actually doing seva at Gurdwara. Is it not because I want to portray people that I am doing good to the society, I am a good person, and it's just a facade, to be honest. I donated this much money. Why is not every step, we are all sitting Punjabis in Sydney, right? We plan better for our future. Why is not every step classified as an ego inflation step? And what is the cut line? When should we think, no, this is not the ego, this is the divine intervention? Yes, Anu, like this is what I think is right. Or what's the borderline in between there?
It's an interesting question, which is how do you differentiate if something is an act of ego or is an act of divine? The only thing is what's going on in here. You yourself know when you're acting out of your ego. Now, I want to help you be clear on your definition of ego. The word ego is not the right word. Because in English, the word ego means self-importance. Guru Nanak is not trying to get rid of your self-importance. He's trying to get rid of the self. So, the words here are, ego is closer to the word hankar, self-importance. Guru Nanak uses a far more fundamental word. He says, Ho main, I am. Ho main dirag rog hai. Your I amness is the problem, not the ego version of I am. Because if you think the ego version of I am is the problem, then you'll say, I'll get rid of the ego version of me, but I'll keep the good version of me. I am. Now it's a very simple question. Am I acting from I am? Am I doing this? Or is the divine doing this? And that you know within yourself. Am I here? Or have I got rid of this I am? Have I let go totally even of the idea that I am doing anything? And you can bring it right down to, did I ask this question? And you know within yourself, who is really here? Do I think I am here? As long as I think I'm here, then the divine isn't here. That oneness isn't here. So ego should be understood. We're not trying to get of hankar. Hankar is just one of those panch chor. They're just there in the background. But the I am, I amness, that's the thing that you have to be vigilant against.
How to overcome the constant spiral of endless fear leaning on Gurbani. The fear could be of any form, shape or form, could be in the form of losing your loved ones, could be things not working out your way, could be your career not taking the direction or the business not taking the direction you want to go, or maybe it could be health, or could be just uncertainty about life per se?
The question is around how do I get rid of all fear? By this point, you're going to know what the answer is. Who experiences fear? Who's experiencing fear? I am. You are not going to get advice on how to get rid of fear. Because what that says is, how do I get rid of fear, but how do I keep the good stuff like happiness, and how do I keep the peace and this and that? I want to be happy. I don't want to be afraid. The wisdom teaches you, nirpao jape, sagal pao mite. Put all of your attention on that ultimate divine fearless one. What that will do is it'll get rid of all your fears. Why? Because it gets rid of the one who has the fear. And it becomes an uncomfortable wisdom. Because once you start digging deeper and deeper and deeper, which is what these questions are doing, eventually it's saying, really? He actually wants me to get rid of the I am. He's not just trying to make a nice person or a good person or a confident person. This wisdom is trying to get rid of me altogether. And that's where these questions are now starting to really dig deeper in. Yes, the price you pay is the highest price. Guru Gobind Singh Ji, we celebrate in a festival called Vaisakhi, where he said the ultimate price that you have to pay is you have to be willing to give yourself up. Give your head. Total self-destruction. It sounds severe. But this is the same wisdom that has been taught right from the beginning of this tradition. Remember, it is Guru Nanak who has been telling us right from the beginning, get rid of the I am, get rid of the I am. Jo to prem khelan ka chao, sir tar tali kali miryao. Who wrote that? Guru Nanak Dev Ji. He's the one that said, if you want to play this game, the price is your head. But the reward is even greater. The Guru is saying, I have the entire divine oneness to give you, but you have to give a payment. The payment is you have to surrender yourself. Now the question is it worth the price? For the ego, it won't be. The ego will say, no, it's not worth it. I'm happy. I'm okay. Main theek haan. The ego has kept me going all this time. I don't want to pay the price. But for those brave enough, willing enough, this is why meditation is important, because it gives you a taste of what's out there, what's available to you. When you silence yourself, you silence the ego's voices in your head, you begin to see there is something far greater than the I am. And it is far sweeter, far more peaceful, far more rewarding. This is why you have to meditate. This is why you have to actually practice. You have to taste the juice that is available to you, the amrit that sits within you. Once you taste that, you know the disappointment of being stuck in your ego. You know the frustration, the suffering of the ego. When you recognize that I am is misery, there is no part of the I am that is joyful. Real joy is getting rid of the I am. So you can't get rid of just one thing called fear. It's a whole package. You have to go for the full package deal.
On one end, we say that jo mange thakur apne te se soi de. I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. And on the other end, it's like karma uppar nibde je loche sab koi. So what is the point of ardas, hukam, past life karma as defined by Sant Maskeen Singh Ji, that your past life and their karma affect you? So no matter how hard you try, they'll still affect you in the future also. So is it like everything is, affected with your karma, or is it hukam, or is it what you are doing in the present moment, or whatever you are asking in your prayers? So what altogether is this, like, basically?
So I think we had a question around this idea of past life. And one of the things that I have always committed myself to is I will only answer a question based on what I know to be true and as something that I have experienced. And I'm very clear that I have no idea what my past life was. But what I am very clear on is the idea of pichle karam. And I do not define pichle karam as things that happen in your past lives, but every past action has brought you to this moment here. So the fact that you're sitting where you're sitting is based on the fact that you got into a car, you drove here, you arrived at a certain time. When you came here, there was only that seat available, you sat there. All the previous things had to happen. Your previous actions affect you up to this point. What you do now will impact what the next moment is. That is your pichle karam having an impact on now. So you can ask the universe for whatever you want. That Shabad Jo Mange Thakur Apne Te Soi Soi Deve is the most misinterpreted Shabad in Guru Granth Sahib. It does not mean whatever I ask I'm going to get. Otherwise we'd all be lottery winners right now. Who hasn't asked for $1 million? Right? That statement would be false then. Whatever you ask, you're going to get. Who's asking? The ego's asking. So go back and have a look at that Shabad. That's not what that verse means at all. But yes, your previous actions determine who you are right now. In fact, it becomes so logical and obvious. Of course. The reason I'm sitting here is because of all the previous things that had to happen in order for me to get here right now. That's the only pichle karam that I am aware of. And more importantly, it helps me to decide what I do now is going to have an impact. I call the law of karma, karam, simply the law of consequences. When you understand it that way, it's very simple.
I've got one question that follows on from all of us. It's been a great day. We've talked about the wisdom in our path and our journey. How do we continue this moving forward? How do we bring this into our life on a daily basis, not just as a practice, but in terms of a real thoughtfulness?
The one thing that's been consistent in what we've talked about is please go back and surround yourself with this wisdom. Do what you can. There is a reason why you read Gurbani every day. It's not just a religious practice. It's not just a commandment from some religious rules that you have to follow. Read this wisdom every day. Find whatever method you can to surround yourself with this wisdom every day. And that doesn't necessarily mean read Bani that you don't understand. Listen to podcasts, have conversations, surround yourself with other people who are talking about these things. But that is the one thing that's going to keep you going, because this is really a battle with the sense of I am, your ego. Your ego will win every time. It has won every day of your life until now, and it'll continue to win unless you bring wisdom into your life. Let that wisdom start to be something that you are constantly engaging with. That's why it's so simple. In the mornings you read a Hukamnama. Don't just read it. Spend a few minutes trying to understand it. Go through the translations. I do this at home with my children before they go to school. Every morning you got to go downstairs, we read the Hukamnama, and we sit there and we go through it. And they ask me questions, what about that and what about that? So they're processing, they're dissecting it. And I've been doing that since they were 2 or 3 years old. Whether they understand it or they don't understand it, slowly they'll start to just get into the habit that this wisdom is something that you need to be surrounding yourself with. If you can, listen to Kirtan while you're getting ready in the morning. But as long as you understand it, don't just make it nice songs that you're listening to. Understand it. Understand this wisdom. This wisdom is available to you, and you're so fortunate. You live in a day and age where you can download it on your phone. There's no excuse. In any language that you want. You only speak Spanish? Download a Spanish version of it. It doesn't matter. Don't hold yourself to, I've only got to do this, I've only got to learn the original versions. And no, prioritize the wisdom.